Okay, so back into the kiln room we are. Now we'll be ready to load the kiln, so they're going to have a quick shot of the inside of the kiln. You can see that those shelves that I talked about that are already set in there, those should always stay in there unless you clean them and then put them back. And you can see where the posts are going to go. There's those little X's on those bottom shelves. So that's where our posts are going to get allocated to. We're going to share that middle post, and then we're going to put the two to the outside edges here. We're going to load that area, load it kind of low and squat. Tall stuff's going to go on the top, and then our next shelf, after being loaded down there, you'll reach in, you'll put these in the same configuration, sharing that middle shelf like that. And the next one will go in, and then you will set your posts, load, and put the next layer of shelves on, and so on and so forth. Up you go. There's two shelves already in the bottom of the kiln, and they're sitting in the kiln like this, side by side. They're in the bottom, and I have placed with a refractory material little X's on them like this. And those X's should stay there because they're fired on. Okay, that is where your post configuration, kiln post, these are kiln posts, and these allow you to put numerous layers of shelves in. So when you go to load or unload, always leave those bottom shelves in there. If you have to clean glaze off of them, then remove them, clean the glaze off of them, put the kiln coating material on them, and replace them in the same order that you took them out. So those will be in there. They're marked because underneath those kiln shelves on the bottom there's a little space, a little air space, and there's already posts. And whenever we put posts on, we put them in line with the posts that are below, so that all the structure is going to go up on the same weight, and all the weight gets transferred down like a building. Okay, so these posts are going to be like this. It's going to be a tripod. Boom, boom, boom. They'll be like that. And then our next kiln shelves will go on, and I'll show you that in a second. You don't need any more than that. This is sharing the two shelves, so you'll use less posts this way. We're going to be on the same level. If later on, I'm going to show you how we could split a level if you've got tall stuff and need to do two different levels. But right now, we're going to stay on the same level. It makes life a lot easier in terms of loading. So we're sharing this one. This one bridges those two shelves, and then this one goes here. So there's a three-point system. This one here is supporting the center of the shelf. We do not have to put one here. So don't worry about that. It's just like this. The next shelf will be, two shelves come out, and they will be the same way. There's the crack down the middle, or the seam. Those will gently get put there. But there'll be wear stacked in the meantime. But I'm just showing you sort of like that's the way it's going to go. And then so on and so forth. Up we go to the top. Always put your posts in first before you put your pieces in, because this allocates space for your posts. Nothing worse than putting all your stuff in and going, oh, where do I put the posts? And you have to start pulling stuff out, a new puzzle. So pretend that this is my greenware. That's green, and it's going to be bisque fired. So these start getting set. It's like a puzzle. A good loader can fit a lot of work in. When it's greenware, there is no glaze. There should be no glaze unless there's some sort of special material that somebody's used. But usually greenware has no glaze on it. It's bone-dry greenware, and it can be carefully stacked on top of each other. Gently stacked on top. I wouldn't want to put something real heavy on here, like this is a pretty heavy piece, I wouldn't necessarily want to do this because maybe that would crack that piece. But I can stack these in a variety of different ways on top of each other to fit things in, instead of just having these like this throughout. You know, that's going to take up a lot of shelves. If I have 100 or so leaves to fire, I'm going to rather gently lay these on top of each other. And remember what I said about bone dry bisqueware, it's fairly fragile. So do this very gently and carefully, lay it up like that. But now I've got 6 pieces in the place of 2, as long as I stay below this layer. Okay? And you know, it's always good to kind of check, that's my measurement. If you're putting things in, like, let's say the kids have made bowls, and these are ceramic bowls, not paper. This could go here. You could take another bowl and put it lip to lip like that. You could even do like this and keep towering it up. All the weight is distributed, you know. This is too tall, but so that's not going to work. You could, if this one fits into the other one, gently lay one inside another one and put another bowl inside there and stack them. You know, as long as there's not a lot of weight on the rims themselves, okay? So, in order to get the most in a load, you know, whenever you can, if you can stack things this way, this piece is too tall, but there's no reason, if this is a greenware piece that's going to be bis fired, that can lay on its side like this. You know, there's nothing wrong with laying that on its side. It doesn't get hot enough for this clay to melt, move. It's going to shrink, get smaller, you know, so it's going to get a little bit shorter, but there's no reason that this has to sit like this, which is the way it was made to be, like this kind of mountain volcano thing. If you have really tall things, then leave the tall things for later in the load. It's not a good idea for way low in the kiln to have a big tower of something like this, because we don't really have big tall posts here. So you'd have to stack numerous posts together. And you can see, even with a shelf on there, that might be a little wobbly. Rather leave that tall stuff for the top of the kiln. So here we go. Let's say, for all intent and purposes, we're done with this load. We don't want stuff sticking off the side of the shelves and touching the side of the kiln, or touching the elements that are in the kiln elements. So keep it within the parameters and not have things touching. They can touch each other in the bisque firing. You know, there's nothing that's going to stick to each other. Clay won't stick to itself. And that's why we can do things like this. So all this stuff can be, sometimes I'll just push it up and right next to each other. So then we put our next shelf in, white side up. We're going to gently reach down into the kiln. This is all happening inside the kiln. I'm just showing you it here because it's so much more visible than you trying to see what's going on down this cylinder here. Get my next one. And what's the first thing I'm going to do? It's going to be place my next posts. So let's say I've got real short stuff, a bunch of really short stuff. Well, then I can go to one, two, three, 1, 2, 3 in the same configuration that I was before. Make sure all your posts, see this post is a little taller than that, so I had to switch it out. That's not going to work. So these are all the same. Sometimes it's good to have a post and then use that as your marker for, is that tall enough? Oh, that's a little too tall. That one's not going to fit in there. So that leaf can't go in that load. So boom, now we're okay. So then I stack all this up. Now I have a big tall sculpture that needs to go in. I can split this now, where I can keep this only one height and go only half a shelf here and put something really big here, big and tall, and fill the rest of the kiln. So at any point I can split my levels, but now I'm not sharing anymore. So now if I wanted to, I could have my big piece of sculpture here. I can go back to my 3-point system here. And continue up. I could do it that way. And that way, this would allow this tall piece to still fit in there, and I could still get all this little stuff on this other side. So I like loading kilns because it's like problem solving, puzzle, okay, how can I get the most in? And it's amazing. Sometimes people can get bisque load because things can touch each other and fit inside each other and whatnot. You can put like a mug inside of a bowl or whatnot, that you can get almost 3 glaze loads in a bisque firing. Enough to do 3 glaze loads, because then when it comes time for glaze loads, we'll talk about that now. Let's pretend like all this stuff now has been glazed. And it's all up here. And it has a glaze on it. So I take my piece, I look at it. Is there any glaze on the bottom? If so, I take my sponge as I demonstrated before, and I wipe that bottom off, or I can use the little posts that fit. So I can put one of those down and set that, and it takes up a little room. So I can do it 2 ways, okay? So then nothing can touch each other, because I can no longer do this because there'll be glaze on these things, and these are going to get glazed together. So everything can be close to each other, like literally like the thickness of a piece of thin cardboard. They can be tucked under each other, but they cannot touch each other. They cannot be inside each other, on top of each other. They have to be separate from each other when they have glaze on them, because often these areas all have glaze, and they're going to fuse together when that gets molten. And we did find some little ones, so for cases like this piece here, then there's that little tripod there. And that still fits with underneath our parameters of how tall or short this is, okay? So all that gets put in. The next 2 shelves go on. The posts go on. So you allocate where your posts are going to be, and then you fit the puzzle parts in between it. Like again, these are wide things. This would fit in between things. And using those little pockets, like there's that space in the middle down here, that would be a great place for this to sit there. Okay? So that would be for the glaze firing. And up we go, and you're kind of leaning in there, so be careful. If for some reason, there's a little thing that does happen sometimes. Sometimes a post you'll put a shelf on, and it'll be rickety like this. See how this is sort of moves like this? It's because this post right here has been kind of cocked. If you can figure out which post that is, watch what's going to happen to this post when I lift this shelf. See how it righted itself there? And then I put this down, and now that's solid. It's no longer rickety. So boom. That's pretty good right there. So if you have to, just lift your shelf corners up a little bit. It's a little bit tighter in the kiln because you're kind of reaching down in here. So then the next one will go on, and these just get butted up against each other. Okay, so boom, 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 up it goes, either for a bisque firing with greenware that can be stacked inside on top of each other, glaze firing, where everything's going to be separate, no glaze on the bottom, or posted on stilts, what they call glaze stilts. And then up we go, and then we're loaded and fired, and then ready for the next step, which would be programming the kiln so that it fires at the proper speed to get things either bisque fired or glaze fired and then glaze matured. Okay? Thank you.